There is still a little bit of stigma about being a female in this industry, and that's something that has to change, and that has to change across the board.
Companies really do need to step out and go to where those people are.
It's not us versus them. This is an ingrained cultural phenomenon in our entire industry.
But if you can stick with it and, do what you do and do it well, it will pay off in the end.
Welcome to the Real MF'ers. We have a special episode for you today, so Scott won't be joining us. Instead, I'm sitting down with Lori Drake from Levelset and Laura Gross from Associated Builders and Contractors to talk about women in construction.
Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to be talking about specifically the Levelset survey, Women in Construction, and the results. I'm super excited to dig into it. I want to talk about what surprised you guys, what was validated, and then most importantly, I want to talk about actionable advice or strategies that we can offer construction business owners to get more women into construction careers. The majority of the women who responded said that they worked for a company that was a company size of 1 to 10 employees, and I was really surprised by that. I was thinking that bigger companies would have more diversity, so I was surprised. Laura, can I start with you? What did you think of that?
It wasn't as surprising to me. I think smaller companies tend to offer a little bit more flexibility and creativity. So I think that there's a draw for women to work for those companies. Our chapter of ABC, we actually only have 7 full-time employees, and 4 of those are women. And that seems to be, just from an association perspective, which tend to be smaller offices, that tends to be the trend that you see. So the stat wasn't as surprising. And with my experience with construction companies, that's the norm. I do think, though, that the flexibility, especially now, post-COVID, I think plays a huge piece in why people choose to work where they work.
What about you, Lori? Did that confirm what it has been your experience as well?
So I was actually really surprised that number was so high above all the rest of them. I've always worked for kind of the mid-market and then just a few kind of the corporates, but you still manage your own branch. So I would have said the mid-market would be where you get the most diversity. Corporate levels, it gets a lot harder. I can see the diversity in small because usually they have the women in the office and the men in the field. So, I can see it. I was just really surprised to see that was that many.
I think the takeaway for me was that, was like you said, Laura, like the small businesses can be more flexible. I also wonder if it's a lot of like mom and pop where there's family being employed, or like, I know my husband has worked in construction for 20 years now, and it's always like the husband, but the wife also works there, and then maybe the son, and then and the sister. Like it's a family business, and so I could see that. Let's talk about representation in the workforce. The question from Levelset was, what percentage of your company's employees are women? And about 22% said 10% of their company was women. But then 18% said either 1% or 25%, which is like a weird split.
Yeah.
So, Lori, I wanted to ask you, do you think this is about some companies putting more effort into diversity programs, or is there something else happening here?
I personally think this one is more by territory. Austin is huge at being diverse. I know Seattle is huge at being diverse. Maybe Oklahoma City isn't so much. I think depending where everybody is, there is definitely different ways companies are doing that. We actually have a diversity program that, we promoted 12 women last year to management positions. We hired another 11 women last year for other positions. We're actually at 35% female for our company, which from what I've seen is actually a really good number. So I think territory is really going to make a difference.
Yeah, I would agree with Lori. I think the makeup of the area or the region that the company works in plays a huge part in that. And as Lori mentioned, the diversity is such a hot topic right now. And I think that a lot of companies are putting forth much more effort into having, whether they have an established diversity program or starting a diversity program, Because I think as the guard changes within a lot of these companies, they're starting to be able to reflect and say, we need to get with it and get with the times. It's 2021. And, women have just as much to offer in construction as men do. And so I think there's some of that also as we transition out of one generation into the other. I think there's going to be that number is going to continue to rise.
I love what you said about, women have just as much to offer as men in construction. And I want to talk about that for just a second, because I think we could do a better job of pushing that message and showcasing that. And so I wanted to ask you both, what strategies should company owners be looking at to recruit women, and particularly to recruit women who are new to the construction trade?
I think that there is and this isn't only for women, but also for the younger generation. I think construction has to be made sexy again. You think of construction and you think about swinging a hammer. And yes, you need people that can do that, but there are so many facets to this industry. Every big company, big to medium-sized company, has a marketing person that they employ. They maybe have somebody that does social media. So I think getting away from that perception that it's just doing the vertical building is one way to increase women in the workforce. But also there are so many skilled trades women, and it's making sure that companies are being vocal about the opportunities to be a tradesperson. So offering training, what is their, professional advancement look like? I think all of those things companies can do to attract women and attract more females into not only their business, but also the industry. In December of 2020, there were 140,000 jobs that were lost, all by women. So there's a ton of women that are looking for a new career. And I think if you can highlight the advantages to being in construction, because there are a lot, it's a viable career. It's not something that's just going to go away, that, you have a better chance of recruiting.
Yeah, I'll go right off of that. We were actually talking about this the other day. And if you notice in the survey, it's just, noticing the credit manager age has kind of hit, I don't want to say, the wrong thing, but it's like 40 and 50 and over. There's not that younger age yet that have come into the construction arena. So I know we are marketing out to like colleges, trade schools, participating in career fairs, and just trying to get that word out there. I never even knew what a credit manager was going through school. I didn't even know that was an option. But to know there's marketing and all that other side, the design, nobody is telling anybody. So the companies really do need to step out and go to where those people are.
When we were doing our previous episode on women in construction, I remember there was this statistic, and I will find it and I will link it in the description. But I don't remember it offhand exactly, but it was about the wage gap and how the wage gap actually decreases for women in this industry. So there is potential to, feed your family, be a single income, and then start your own business. We have a lot of women business owners who are clients at Mobilization Funding. So there's huge potential there. And I think you're right. I think going to the colleges, also getting younger, going to the schools, going to high schools and talking to them about how this is a viable career option.
I totally agree. And we start at the middle school level. And it's really just, at that point, you're kind of just talking about construction and then getting into high school, where there's so many kids now that, not necessarily that they don't want to go to college. Some, of course, don't, but some maybe don't want to go to college right out of high school. And so they don't know what to do. And they look at, okay, I can go work at the mall, we'll say, and make $13 an hour, or I can go work in construction. And again, that's where they think they're just going to be outside. But if they knew, like you said, design, marketing, you've got sales, all of those things you can do in construction. And if you don't know that those options are there and you only think of it as one avenue, that's where the downfall comes in.
So carrying on that conversation about representation and how the divide gets a little bigger when we talk about leadership, the majority of the women who responded said they work in office administrative roles. There was not a lot of leadership roles for women, according to the 1,000 women who responded to the survey. And the quote that stuck with me was, one woman said, "The glass ceiling is very real for smart women in technical positions." And my heart broke a little bit, but I want to know what your experience has been like as women leaders in the industry, and then talk about what companies can do to promote from within and increase that leadership percentage.
I think the size of the company is going to make a real difference, because if you're with the small or mid-sized companies, there aren't a lot of places to go. I mean, I was with one company for 9 years, same position, and if I stayed, it was going to be the same position, another 9 years down the road. So there really isn't anywhere to go. So I think you have to kind of decide what you're looking for, and also what area you live in, because you can go north or south, and the whole salary is different there as well. But as long as your employer will let you continue your education, let you go to, say, like the quarterly association meetings, the credit conferences, those kind of things are more valuable to you personally. Even if you don't get that raise, but they're covering the expenses for that, it's never going to not be a good thing to go. And if something does happen and you do decide to go somewhere else, that education is looked at and wanted at those larger companies. And then that's where it'll help with your pay and hopefully get higher up in the position.
I would agree with Lori. I think it depends on the company and what your opportunity is. And that's why I think it's so important that companies lay that out. Because you can get to a point where it's like, this is as good as it's going to get. And maybe you stay there because there are additional benefits. I think that we've learned over the past 5 or 6 years that not every employee is always looking for a financial gain with their role. They want to learn more, whether it's about their specific job or about the industry that they're in. And they want that personal growth in the event that something does change and they have to move on. So I think training and giving your employees the ability to take part in training is a huge thing that the industry can do to promote and recruit leadership roles. And I do think there is, in construction, unfortunately, there is still a bit of the good old boy system. So we have to kind of get through that. I mean, that's what the quote spoke to me, is you can be smarter than everyone else in the room, but there is still a little bit of stigma about being a female in this industry. And that's something that has to change, and that has to change across the board.
I did an interview on one of the ladies we were featuring for the Week of Women in Construction. And one thing that she had said is very early on, she had to make a decision if she was going to play with the boys or stand on her own. The guys are done on the job. They want to go to a strip club. Oh, you coming with me? And she's like, nope, go ahead. I'm good. You got to make sure you can draw those lines as well, because I think if you put yourself in that kind of situation, then you're going to become one of the good boys, and they're really not going to look at you for those kind of higher level positions. And that's a tough thing to do as a woman.
You got to hold your own, unfortunately. And if that's not something that you should have to tell, but you have to be able to hold your own. I mean, you can be one female in a room of 30 males, and you got to be able to hold your own. And it's hard sometimes. I think that sometimes they think they can intimidate you and push you around. And so you just have to kind of hold to what you know and hold to your system and what you believe in and what you're doing in your job, and know that you're capable. And once all of those crazy thoughts change that people still have, I think that, again, that number will go up for women in leadership roles.
It speaks to me, the idea of like, you have to be able to hold your own. You have to know your value when you walk into the room. I think across industries, I think most women are going to say, yes, I've had that moment where I've walked in and I was the only woman in the room and I was presenting. So I had to be the one that showed my value, or I had to speak up and talk over someone just to be able to get my feedback in. It makes me wonder if there are more opportunities for mentoring from women who are in roles of leadership for those junior roles, so that we can, because it is very intimidating when you're young to step up. And so you do become kind of a wallflower who does a great job, but maybe isn't advocating as strongly as you could for those leadership roles, if that's something you're interested in. Do either of you have mentorship opportunities within your corporation?
With Levelset, we do. We actually have one that's called an accountability buddy. And then you also have your Z buddy, because they used to be Zing. We have a lot of fun stuff, or, taking each other on and learning from each other. But even with the credit side, it's the association groups that you're going to find your mentor in. And usually the women that are older, they take on someone younger. And I mean, they'll take you all the way through be the president of NACM, or, the CFO of the company or something. You definitely have to be open to having someone help you. If you're not, you will kind of just dwindle away and not really take part. I was a chairman of association for 4 years, and we had this girl on it where she never went to the dinners. She never went out with everybody to have a drink. She just kind of did her own thing. Well, unfortunately, she lost her job, and then she had contacted us to help her find a new one. And unfortunately, she was known as the girl that doesn't partake in anything. So you do have to kind of watch yourself more than I bet men have to. You just have to pay attention. You want to get the right reputation.
So while we're on the subject of culture and and respect, most of the women in the survey, 8 out of 10, said they feel respected, but 65% of them said they don't feel that they are heard or listened to by leadership when compared to their male peers. I don't think any of us sitting here were surprised by that. To me, this speaks to a cultural issue within the industry. And construction is kind of known for its, not only its good old boy kind of, network, but also the tough guy mentality, right? So it might be harder if you are not the type of woman who is willing to just barge in, like I am, but not everyone is. So I think that there's room to, as an industry, make room for new types of cultures within construction. So whichever one wants to go first, how can we as an industry work on opening up that culture so there is more opportunity for women to speak up, and so that we can show the men in the room it's a good idea to listen to us?
I think that having, whether it's a local chamber or associations that can help offer, something for women on how to present, and, how, if you are the only woman in the room, how do you make your voice heard? Sometimes you got to be a dog with a bone and just make sure that they do hear you. Of course, you don't want to lose your job doing it and seem pushy by any means. And so you are always walking this balance. You don't want to be too emotional. You don't want it to be too bossy. And so I think that's hard, because you never know what vibe you're giving off. From the other perspective on how you get them to realize it, I think you just have to keep putting the work in. And how do you, this, male leadership, you just have to keep putting the work in, that, giving examples or again, I hate to keep bringing up training, but I think that's really the only thing you can do, is just keep opening people's eyes to, this is a real problem. And I would go out on a limb and say most of them don't even realize that they're doing it. They probably don't even realize that they're just ignoring people's opinions. But that's how it's coming across. And so I think that it's twofold, making sure that from the female perspective that you are putting your best foot forward, and not that you aren't, but who couldn't always use a refresher, but also the current leadership is just getting them to understand that, again, women should have a seat at the table.
I don't know if you know Thea Dudley. She's like one of these huge in the credit field. She actually just wrote a book that we're launching for her. She's called The Credit Guru. So go to levelset.com, credit book, you can see it. But she's actually got a chapter in there where she talks about how to get heard, what to say, when to say it, how to say it. And like you were saying, those emotions, you got to keep out of it. Guys always say girls are too emotional. So if you can feel it coming on your face, just, excuse me for a minute, and then come back.
Which I find ironic, because I have never heard women yell at each other the way I hear guys in the shop yell at each other. Like,
they're just as emotional, just in a different way.
Right. I really liked, Laura, I liked your point about they don't even know they're doing it. I think that's a really important point, because I think when we frame these conversations as you need to listen to women, it's too easy to say, well, I am, or to give that pushback. But just saying, this is a workshop to teach you to be a more effective listener is good for everyone involved. And I think that's an important takeaway, is that, it's not us versus them. This is an ingrained cultural phenomenon in our entire country, let alone our entire industry. So, it's going to take some work, and you've got to pray and move your feet. You've got to believe that this can change. You've got to assume good intent, but you've still got to also have the tough conversations and do the work.
Absolutely. And I think most people will tell you, if you ask any leadership coach, that people don't know how to listen. They hear you, but they don't know how to listen. And I think that that's it's not, it may come off that way. And I'm not saying that it's not, that they're not just dismissing you, because that happens, right? You just, well, you're a woman, you don't know what you're talking about. But I think that as human beings, we're just not good listeners. And so I think if you can generalize it of like, we're going to work on listening techniques, I think that then that how those women are feeling or how they're perceiving it, I think that that might change slightly. But again, those individuals that are getting the training have to want to listen better as well.
It needs to come from like the ownership down. One of the companies I worked for, the teamwork was horrible. People listening to each other was horrible. They were yelling back and forth. He actually booked a hotel and everybody was required to be there for the entire weekend. Sales, accounting, you name it. And it was a program called SWAT. I don't remember what it would stand for, but by that Sunday afternoon and coming to work Monday, oh my gosh, I mean, everybody got along so well. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say it lasted forever, but it was a huge difference.
And there's a monetary value in being a better listener and in creating a listening culture. I will find the NPR story and link it in the description, but there is a fairly famous NPR story of, I think it was Shell Oil that was had just outrageous safety accidents on their offshore drills. Mm. And what they did when they took a chance and they hired an expert to come in and talk to the crew. And what they found was that people were not willing to ask things they did not know. And they were not willing to say when they were too tired to work. And so they were having massive accidents, which has a human cost, and also a financial cost. Mm-hmm. And I think the same could be true in construction. If we could learn to listen better, we would, and feel more open to ask questions and to advocate for ourselves, we could probably have a safer industry, which is, obviously very important. And wouldn't we all like to come to work in that environment?
Yeah, definitely.
I am down to my last question. And that is simply, what message would you like to send to young women? Ooh, the lights just shut off in my office. What message would you want to send to women entering the construction industry? What message do you wish you had received when you started out that you can share with our audience?
I think it's corny, but I think you have to stick with it. I think if it's an industry that you want to be in, there is so much opportunity. There is so much room for growth. There is so much room for learning new things and your new skills and all those things. And there's going to be roadblocks. There always are. But if you can stick with it and, do what you do and do it well, it will pay off in the end. It's going to be hard, but there's always support as well. Whether you think so or not, there's another female that's going through the same thing. There's tens of thousands of women in construction going through the same thing. So just grind it out.
My thing with construction, I would be telling them how fun it is. I mean, once I got into construction, I never left. I mean, I love dealing with lien rights. I love dealing with properties and plans and all this stuff that you just don't get to do in any other position. I mean, obviously I was a credit manager, so I called it my hammer. The lien rights are my hammer. It's kind of my way to get people to pay. I worked for a reseller. Well, we just shut their phones off. That's not really that exciting, So there's just a lot of things in this industry that you get to do that it's just not boring. I mean, it's always changing, it's always moving, and it's definitely always growing. I mean, even during all the COVID, we were essentials and we still went to work and still built stuff. So I think that would be a point I would make across.
Yeah, you could be working on a project on a school one day and healthcare the next day. So It's an ever-changing environment for sure. And no day is the same. No day is the same. Even for, I'm not on a project and out in the field, but no day is the same.
Right. Fun and full of opportunity, but you got to grind it out.
Yep.
That was amazing. Thank you guys so much for your time. This was so wonderful. Thank you all for your time as well. I hope you like and subscribe. Visit mobilizationfunding.com for more videos and resources. If you are part of the construction industry and in the Tampa Bay area, I hope you check out the ABC Florida Gulf Coast chapter. And no matter where you are, I hope you check out Levelset. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like the show, please take a moment to subscribe and leave us a review. Thank you so much for your support. It means a lot. If you'd like to learn more about mobilization funding, visit us at mobilizationfunding.com. And we'll see you next time right here on The Real MF'ers.